Single dad CEO asks his maid to pretend to be his fake girlfriend. Unexpectedly, she'd steal his heart. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was an ordinary Tuesday when CEO Ryan Hayes found himself in yet another high-stakes business meeting, his thoughts occupied by the latest family gathering he'd been forced to attend. As a single father, the last thing he wanted was to be surrounded by his overbearing relatives, all asking the same invasive questions about his personal life. He had no interest in getting involved in another false relationship or pretending for the sake of appearances. But when his assistant suggested a solution, his maid, Lily, could pretend to be his girlfriend for the event, Ryan found himself in an impossible position. Lily was nothing more than an employee in his household, a woman who had been with him for years. She was diligent, kind, and completely out of place in his world. But there was something about her, her authenticity, her quiet strength, and the way she managed to keep his household running smoothly. Still, the idea of her as his fake girlfriend seemed absurd. Yet, he was desperate. With no other options, he decided to ask her. The request came out more awkwardly than he intended. "Lily, I need a favor," he said, his voice thick with hesitation. "I need someone to pose as my girlfriend for an event. It's just for a few hours, and I'll make it worth your time." Lily blinked in surprise, her heart racing at the unexpected proposal. "I am not sure what you mean, Mr. Hayes," she stammered, her brow furrowing in confusion. "I need someone to play the part. It's just for a family gala, and they're pushing me to bring someone." "I can't do it alone," Ryan explained, his voice tense with frustration. Lily felt the weight of his words, her mind racing. She wasn't a model, nor someone accustomed to playing pretend, but she knew how important this event was. To Ryan, he'd always been a distant figure, wealthy, successful, but emotionally unavailable. She didn't know him well beyond the confines of his mansion, but what she did know was that his family had a way of pushing his boundaries. "I don't have anyone else to turn to," he continued, his tone softer now, almost vulnerable. "Will you help me?" Lily didn't want to say yes, but her mind quickly spun through the possibilities. She could use the money, and after all, it was just a few hours of pretending. Plus, she had always admired the way Ryan had built his empire. "All right," she said, her voice steady despite the confusion swirling inside her. "I'll do it." As soon as the words left her lips, she immediately regretted them. What had she just agreed to? The idea of pretending to be in a relationship with her employer felt surreal. But she couldn't back out now. Ryan, visibly relieved, gave a small nod. "Thank you, Lily. I promise this will be painless." Later that evening, Lily stood before the mirror, trying to adjust the expensive dress Ryan had ordered for her. It was nothing like the second-hand clothes she was used to wearing. The fabric clung to her in ways she wasn't comfortable with, but she had to admit, she looked different. She looked like she belonged. As she applied a bit of makeup, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had no idea how to act in this world of luxury. But she had agreed to this, and there was no turning back. Ryan picked her up in his sleek black car, the engine purring as they drove toward the venue. He kept glancing at her from the corner of his eye, and for a moment, she wondered if he was having second thoughts. "Lily," he said suddenly, breaking the silence, "I know this is all a bit strange, but I appreciate you doing this." She nodded, unsure of how to respond. As they arrived at the gala, the flashing lights and the crowd of glamorous people made her feel out of place. She clutched her purse tightly, feeling the weight of the evening ahead. She had no idea how long this charade would last, but she knew she had to keep up appearances for Ryan. They walked into the ballroom together, and the moment they stepped inside, Ryan's family surrounded them. "Ryan, who's this lovely lady?" His aunt greeted them with a wide smile, her eyes scanning Lily from head to toe. Ryan's hand tightened slightly around hers, but his expression remained calm. "This is Lily," he said smoothly. "My girlfriend." The words hung in the air, and Lily couldn't help but feel a surge of embarrassment. She forced a smile, but inside, she was panicking. How was she supposed to do this? How was she supposed to act like she was in a real relationship with Ryan Hayes? As the evening wore on, they played the part. Ryan introduced her to his colleagues and family members, all of them exchanging polite but curious glances. Lily found herself wondering what Ryan was thinking. Was he just doing this for show, or was there more to it? She couldn't quite put her finger on it. And as the night continued, something started to shift. Ryan's hand brushed against hers more often than was necessary, and each time, a spark of warmth passed between them. She could feel the walls he had built around himself begin to crack, just a little. But it wasn't until later that night, when the event was winding down, that Ryan did something unexpected. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time that evening. "Lily," he said quietly, "thank you. You've done more for me than you know." She didn't know how to respond, but in that moment, she realized something. This was no longer just a fake relationship. Something real was beginning to form, and neither of them knew where it would lead. But one thing was certain, everything was about to change. As the night went on, Ryan and Lily continued to play their parts. The gala was filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. The atmosphere was elegant and glamorous, but Lily couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. Her hand remained in Ryan's, but she felt like an outsider in a world that was far removed from the one she knew. Every time she caught someone's eye, they looked at her like she didn't belong. She could feel their judgment, their curiosity. She had never been in a room like this before, surrounded by wealth and power. She wasn't the woman that Ryan's family or colleagues expected him to be with. She was just the maid. But somehow, she had managed to fit in, at least for tonight. Ryan, on the other hand, seemed completely at ease. He spoke with his colleagues, smiling and shaking hands, his usual confident self. But every now and then, Lily noticed his gaze shifting toward her. He'd glance at her in a way that made her stomach flutter, though she quickly brushed the thought aside. She was here for a purpose, nothing more. But as the evening wore on, she couldn't help but notice something different in the way he looked at her. It was more than just the polite attention he had given her earlier. It was a look of genuine curiosity, something she had never seen in him before. Was it possible he was starting to see her as more than just his fake girlfriend? They both tried to keep up appearances, but deep down, they were both struggling with the roles they were playing. The night was coming to a close, and as the final guests began to leave, Ryan led Lily outside to the terrace. The cool evening air felt refreshing after the stuffy ballroom. He took a deep breath, the weight of the night lifting slightly from his shoulders. "You did great tonight, Lily," he said, his voice sincere. She looked up at him, surprised by the compliment. "I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing," she admitted, her voice quiet. "You were fine," Ryan replied. "In fact, you were better than fine. You made this whole thing bearable." Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She hadn't expected him to acknowledge her efforts. "Thank you," she said softly. They stood in silence for a moment, looking out at the city below. The lights of the city twinkled in the distance, a stark contrast to the emptiness Lily felt inside. She had done what she came to do, but a part of her couldn't help but feel like something had shifted. Ryan cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Lily, he stopped himself, as if unsure of what he was about to say. "What is it?" she asked, looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Ryan hesitated, then took a step closer to her. "I'm not good at this. At feeling things," he confessed, his voice low. "I've built this wall around myself, and I've kept everyone at a distance. But tonight, with you, it was different." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to open up to her, especially not like this. She had always seen him as the perfect, untouchable CEO, the man who had it all together. To hear him speak so vulnerably caught her off guard. "Ryan," she began, unsure of how to respond. "I'm not asking for anything," he continued quickly, as if to reassure her. "I just needed to say it. You've made me feel something I didn't expect, and I don't know what to do with it." His honesty struck her. For a moment, she just stood there, processing his words. She had come to this event thinking it was just a temporary role, a fake relationship that would end the moment the night was over. But now, with Ryan standing before her, his walls coming down, she wondered if there was something more between them. She had always admired his strength, his determination, and his ability to remain composed in the face of everything. But now, she saw a side of him she hadn't expected, vulnerability. And it made her realize that she wasn't just playing a part in his life. Maybe she had already become a part of it. She took a deep breath and stepped closer to him, closing the space between them. "Ryan, you don't have to do this alone," she said softly, her voice filled with empathy. "I know you've built your life on your own, but that doesn't mean you have to keep everything locked away." Ryan looked at her, his eyes searching hers, as if trying to read her thoughts. For a moment, they both stood there, the world around them fading into the background. "You're right," he said finally, his voice soft but steady. "Maybe I've been running from the wrong things." Lily smiled, a small, knowing smile. For the first time that night, she felt like they were no longer just playing pretend. There was something real between them, something that neither of them had expected but were both beginning to recognize. The night had started with a simple request, a need to appear normal for a few hours. But now, as they stood together on the terrace, something deeper had begun to take root. And neither of them knew where it would lead, but for the first time in a long time, they were both willing to find out. As the days passed after the gala, Ryan and Lily's relationship, once rooted in pretense, began to feel less like a role and more like reality. What started as a temporary arrangement for an event had become something neither of them could ignore. Lily tried to keep her distance, reminding herself that she was simply a maid, hired to play a part in a fake relationship. But every glance, every small interaction with Ryan, made it harder to stick to that boundary. Ryan, too, seemed to struggle with the growing connection between them. He tried to act as if nothing had changed, but the way he looked at her, longer than usual, with a softness that was new, told a different story. One afternoon, after a long week of meetings and charity events, Ryan asked Lily to join him for a quiet dinner at his apartment. It was unusual, but Lily agreed, not wanting to refuse. She had spent so much of her life keeping to herself, that now, being around Ryan, even in these small moments, felt strangely comforting. As she arrived at his place, she was greeted with a warm smile. "I thought we could eat in tonight, just the two of us," Ryan said casually, leading her into the spacious living room. The apartment was just as luxurious as she remembered, with its high ceilings, modern art, and soft lighting that made everything feel serene. They sat at the large dining table, the meal prepared by his personal chef. As they ate, Ryan spoke about his work, his family, and the pressures he faced. Lily listened intently, feeling a side of him she had never seen before. For the first time, he wasn't just the powerful CEO, he was a man, burdened by expectations, looking for something more than just success. "You know," he said, breaking the silence between bites, "I've always been in control of everything in my life. But with you it's different." Lily looked up at him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. "You're not like everyone else I've known. You don't ask anything from me, yet you've given me something I didn't realize I was missing," Ryan admitted, his eyes searching hers. Lily felt her heart skip a beat, and for a moment, she wasn't sure what to say. She had always seen Ryan as the man who had it all together, the one who could never be shaken. But now, sitting across from him, she saw the vulnerability he had been hiding all this time. She smiled gently, trying to keep her emotions in check. "I didn't expect to be here either," she said, her voice quiet. "I never thought I'd be sitting in your apartment, having dinner with you." Ryan's expression softened, and he leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I know this isn't ideal," he said after a long pause, "but I feel like I've been missing out on something real. Something I didn't know I needed." His words hit her harder than she expected, and she struggled to keep her composure. She had been trying to tell herself that this was just a temporary arrangement, that once the gala was over, things would go back to normal. But now, as Ryan spoke, she realized how much she had already allowed herself to become emotionally invested in him. She wasn't sure if it was the luxury of his world or the warmth of his touch, but something in her had changed. "Maybe we both needed this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan didn't respond immediately, but the look in his eyes spoke volumes. He wasn't sure where this connection would lead, but for the first time in a long time, he didn't mind not knowing. He had spent so much of his life chasing success and power, thinking that they would bring him happiness. But now, with Lily, he realized that happiness didn't come from the wealth he had accumulated or the empire he had built. It came from something simpler, something more genuine. As they finished their dinner, the conversation turned lighter, and the evening stretched into a comfortable silence. But as Ryan showed her to the door, something in the air shifted. He reached out and gently took her hand. "Lily," he said, his voice quiet but firm. I know this started as a favor, but I think we need to have an honest conversation about what's been happening between us. Lily's heart raced as she looked into his eyes. She knew that this moment was coming, and she wasn't sure how to handle it. But one thing was clear: the fake relationship was no longer just a facade. It had turned into something deeper, something neither of them had expected. "I'm ready to talk," she said, her voice steady, even though her heart was pounding in her chest. As they stood there, hand in hand, the world outside seemed to fade away. For the first time, Ryan didn't feel the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him. He felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted, and all that mattered in that moment was Lily and the connection they had built. Neither of them knew where this would lead, but they were no longer afraid of the unknown. Together, they were ready to face whatever came next. As days turned into weeks, Ryan and Lily continued to navigate the delicate balance between what had started as a charade and what was growing into something more genuine. The conversations became less forced, the glances more lingering, and the moments they shared outside the confines of their roles were more frequent. Ryan had kept his distance, not wanting to admit to himself that he was falling for Lily. She, on the other hand, was torn between her duty to keep up the pretense and the undeniable connection she was starting to feel. It was one rainy afternoon when everything changed. Ryan had asked her to meet him at his office. He wasn't his usual composed self that day. His usual business attire looked slightly disheveled, his tie askew as he stared at the files in front of him with an absent look in his eyes. Lily walked in, holding a cup of coffee, noticing immediately that something was off. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, setting the coffee down in front of him. He glanced up, startled by the sound of her voice, as though he had been lost in thought for far too long. "Yeah," he said, rubbing his temples. "Just a lot on my mind." Lily could tell there was more to it. She took a seat beside him, her presence comforting in its simplicity. She didn't say anything at first. Instead, she just waited for him to speak, her calm demeanor allowing him the space to open up if he chose to. "I've been thinking about everything," Ryan said finally, his voice quieter than usual. "About you. About us." Lily's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her expression neutral. She knew this conversation had been coming. She just wasn't sure how to handle it. "We've been pretending for so long, Ryan. Pretending for everyone else," she said, her voice soft but steady. "But I don't want to pretend anymore." He met her gaze, his eyes filled with conflict. "Neither do I," he confessed. "But this whole thing, it started out as a favor, and now it feels real. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't know if you are either." His words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Lily took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I didn't think I was ready either," she admitted. "But every time I'm with you, I feel like I'm more than just a maid. I feel like I'm someone who matters, someone who belongs. And I know that's not what we planned, but maybe it's what we need." Ryan's expression softened, and for a brief moment, she saw the vulnerability he had tried so hard to hide. He reached out, taking her hand gently in his. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly, "but I want to try. I want to try with you, Lily." There was no dramatic gesture, no grand proclamation of love, but in that moment, Lily understood. She didn't need him to have all the answers, and she didn't need him to be perfect. What mattered was that he was willing to open up, willing to take a chance, just as she was. "Then let's try together," she said, her voice a quiet promise. They sat in silence for a moment, just holding each other's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. For the first time in a long while, Ryan didn't feel the weight of his empire on his shoulders. He didn't feel like he had to have it all figured out. He just felt right. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Their relationship, once based on a contract, had turned into something genuine, something neither of them had expected. They spent more time together, not as employer and maid, but as two people slowly discovering the depth of their feelings for each other. Lily was no longer just a fake girlfriend in his eyes. She was someone he trusted, someone who made him feel alive in a way he hadn't in years. For Lily, the change was even more profound. She had come into Ryan's life as an outsider, but now, she was starting to feel like she had a place in it. She was no longer just an employee. She was someone who mattered to him, someone who had the power to change his world. But even as they grew closer, there was still one obstacle in their way: Ryan's family. His mother, in particular, had always pushed for him to settle down with someone of his status, someone who could help elevate his image in business. Lily was not that person. But Ryan was determined to prove that he didn't need his family's approval to be happy. He didn't need to follow their expectations. He needed to follow his heart. One weekend, he invited his mother to dinner, and for the first time, Lily was going to meet her. She was nervous, unsure of how Ryan's mother would react to their relationship. But as they sat down for dinner, Ryan squeezed her hand under the table, silently reassuring her. "Just be yourself," he whispered. And that's exactly what Lily did. She was kind, poised, and honest, never pretending to be someone she wasn't. Ryan's mother, though initially distant, began to see the warmth in Lily's eyes, the sincerity in her voice, and the way she made Ryan light up in a way no one else ever had. By the end of the evening, she had softened, just a little. The night ended without any dramatic declarations, but for Ryan and Lily, it was a victory. It wasn't about winning his mother's approval. It was about stepping into a future that was theirs, without the constraints of expectations or pretense. As they left the restaurant, Ryan turned to Lily, his eyes filled with something deeper than affection. "We're not pretending anymore, are we?" he asked, his voice filled with quiet confidence. Lily smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had never known before. "No," she replied softly, "we're not." And in that moment, they both knew that their journey together had only just begun. As the weeks passed, Ryan and Lily found their relationship blossoming in a way neither of them had expected. What started as a favor, a charade for an event, had transformed into something much deeper and real. Ryan began to spend more time with her outside of work, no longer keeping her at arm's length as he had before. He was starting to open up in ways that felt both natural and freeing, and Lily, though still uncertain of the future, allowed herself to embrace the changes unfolding before her. One sunny afternoon, Ryan invited Lily to join him at a charity event he was hosting. This was no ordinary gathering. It was an event meant to celebrate the work of the organization he had poured his heart and soul into. Lily had seen the dedication he had for the foundation, but she had never experienced it firsthand. As they entered the venue together, she noticed the way people looked at them, not with skepticism or judgment, but with genuine interest. For the first time, they were no longer just playing a role. They were seen as a couple, as equals. As Ryan spoke to the crowd, thanking everyone for their support, Lily stood beside him, quietly observing. She admired the way he commanded attention, yet still managed to make those around him feel important. It was one of the many qualities she had grown to love about him. But as the night went on, Lily noticed something that made her heart ache. Ryan seemed distracted. He kept glancing around the room, his smile a little too stiff, his eyes a little too distant. After the speeches and presentations were over, Lily approached him quietly. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly, her voice full of concern. Ryan glanced at her, his expression shifting for a moment before he gave her a forced smile. "Yeah, everything's fine," he said, though his voice didn't carry the usual confidence. Lily could see through his facade, but she didn't press him further. Instead, she just stayed by his side, offering her silent support. They spent the rest of the evening together, but something felt different. Ryan was no longer the man who had embraced her with open arms. There was a wall between them, one he hadn't built but that had quietly crept in. The next day, things were still off. Ryan's usual texts, full of warmth and humor, had become short and impersonal. He avoided their usual lunch meetings, opting to work through his lunch break instead. Lily tried to reach out, but every attempt felt like she was hitting a wall. She had no idea what had happened, but she felt like she was losing him. Again, just as she had feared. One evening, after another long day of silence between them, Ryan asked her to meet him. She agreed, though her heart was heavy with the worry that had been building for days. When they sat down at a quiet cafe, Ryan didn't waste time getting to the point. "Lily, I need to be honest with you," he began, his voice steady but tinged with guilt. "I've been distant because I'm scared. I'm scared of what we're becoming. I've never let anyone get this close, and now, with you, it feels different." Lily looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had known that this moment would come. She had always feared that the walls he had spent so long building would come crashing down the moment he started to care. But instead of pulling away, she leaned in closer. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice gentle but firm, "you don't have to be afraid. It's okay to let people in, to let them see who you really are. I'm not going anywhere. Ryan looked at her, a mix of disbelief and relief crossing his face. It was as if, in that one moment, a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He had been so afraid of losing control, of exposing his vulnerability, that he had built walls around himself that no one could break down, not even Lily. But now, with her by his side, he realized he didn't need those walls anymore. I don't know how to do this, he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. But I want to try. I want to try with you, Lily. Lily smiled, her heart swelling with affection for him. We don't have to have it all figured out right now, she said, her voice soothing. We'll take it one step at a time, together. That night, something shifted. Ryan wasn't just the CEO anymore. He wasn't just the man who had hired her to play a role in his life. He was someone who was ready to embrace love, to embrace her, flaws and all. And Lily wasn't just the maid anymore. She was the woman who had stolen his heart, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a place in his world. The next few days were filled with small, but significant changes. Ryan started reaching out more, sharing more of his life with her, opening up in ways he hadn't before. He began to take her opinions seriously, including her in decisions that he would have never considered her input on before. Lily, in turn, allowed herself to lean into this new dynamic. She no longer saw herself as an outsider in his world. She saw herself as a part of it. But just as things seemed to be heading in the right direction, they were faced with a challenge neither of them had expected. Ryan's mother, who had been skeptical of their relationship from the beginning, decided to pay them a visit. Lily knew this was coming, but she had no idea how difficult it would be to face Ryan's family again. As they sat down for dinner, Ryan's mother, while polite, seemed to be looking for any reason to challenge their relationship. Every word she spoke, every look she gave, made Lily feel like she was under a microscope. But through it all, Ryan stood by her side, his hand resting gently on hers, showing his mother that he was no longer afraid to be with her. It wasn't easy, but as the evening wore on, Lily realized something. Ryan wasn't just fighting for their relationship. He was fighting for her. And in that moment, she knew that no matter what challenges they faced, they would face them together. The dinner with Ryan's mother left a heavy silence in the days that followed. Though Ryan had stood by Lily's side the entire evening, the tension in the air had been undeniable. His mother's polite but piercing comments echoed in Lily's mind long after the plates were cleared and the goodbyes were exchanged. She had smiled through it all, but inside, she felt small, out of place, and painfully aware of the difference between their worlds. Ryan noticed the change in her immediately. She had become quieter, more distant, as if retreating into herself. Every time he tried to bring it up, she brushed it off with a small smile and a shake of her head. I'm fine, she'd say, even though they both knew she wasn't. One evening, as Ryan came home from work, he found her sitting on the back porch, staring at the fading sunset. The golden light framed her silhouette, and for a moment, he just watched her in silence. Then, quietly, he joined her, sitting beside her without saying a word. It was a few minutes before she spoke. Your mother doesn't think I'm good enough for you, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan's chest tightened. That's not true, he said quickly, but Lily turned to look at him, her eyes filled with sadness. Ryan, it is true. She may not have said it directly, but I could feel it in every word she spoke. The way she looked at me, like I was temporary, like I was something that didn't belong in your life. Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Lily, you belong with me. You've changed my life in ways I can't even explain. I don't care what anyone thinks, not my family, not the board, not anyone. But Lily looked away, shaking her head. It's not that simple. You have your world, Ryan, your business, your family, your reputation. I don't fit into that world. I'm just me. Her words hit him hard. He had spent so much time convincing himself that their love was enough, that the world around them wouldn't matter. But now he realized how much pressure she had been under. You're not just you, Lily, he said, his voice firm but gentle. You're the person who taught me how to be human again. You're the one who reminded me that life is more than deals and deadlines. I don't want a world without you in it. Lily looked at him, her eyes glistening with tears. And what if your family makes you choose? She asked, her voice trembling. What if it comes down to them or me? Ryan didn't hesitate. Then I choose you, he said, his tone unwavering. Every single time. The conviction in his voice left her speechless. For a long moment, they just sat there in silence, the weight of his words hanging in the air. The world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the faint hum of the city in the distance. Ryan reached out and took her hand, his thumb brushing against her skin in slow, reassuring circles. "I know this isn't easy," he said quietly, "and I can't promise that things will always be simple. But I can promise you this. I'm not going anywhere." Lily's heart ached at his sincerity. She had spent so much of her life running from disappointment, from the fear of not being enough, that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen. "I'm scared, Ryan," she admitted finally. "I'm scared that one day, all of this will disappear, and I'll be right back where I started." Ryan gently lifted her chin, meeting her gaze. "Then let me prove to you that it won't. Let me show you that this is real." And for the first time that night, she believed him. She leaned into his touch, letting the warmth of his hand calm the storm inside her. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet glow of the fading sunset, the world felt still. They stayed there long after the light had faded, the stars beginning to emerge one by one in the night sky. It was peaceful, grounding, and for both of them, it felt like a turning point. In the days that followed, Ryan began making subtle but powerful changes in his life. He stopped hiding their relationship. He brought Lily to company events, introduced her to friends, and made it clear to everyone that she was an important part of his life. Some people whispered, others stared, but Ryan didn't care. For the first time, he was living authentically, and it felt right. Lily, though nervous at first, began to find her footing. She no longer saw herself as an outsider. She started volunteering with the foundation Ryan had built, helping those who came from the same background she once did. Her compassion and dedication won over many of those who had once doubted her. Ryan watched her with pride, amazed at how effortlessly she carried herself now. One evening, as they left another charity event, Ryan turned to her with a small smile. "You know," he said, "I think my mother is starting to come around." Lily laughed softly, the sound warm and genuine. "Or maybe she just realized I'm not going anywhere," she teased. Ryan grinned, squeezing her hand. "Either way, I'm glad. Because I meant what I said. I choose you, always." And as they walked into the night, hand in hand, Lily knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, side by side, just as they always had. As the days passed, Ryan and Lily's relationship continued to grow stronger, though the road ahead wasn't always smooth. Ryan's family remained a challenge, especially his mother, who still struggled to accept Lily as part of his life. But Ryan was steadfast, and with every passing day, Lily became more secure in their relationship. She had always been the one to hide her vulnerability, but with Ryan, she was slowly learning how to trust not only him, but herself as well. One evening, after a particularly trying day at work, Ryan asked Lily to join him for a quiet dinner at his place. It was a simple request, but it meant everything to her. Their time together had become precious, and she cherished these moments where they could just be themselves without the pressures of the outside world. As they sat down to eat, Ryan seemed quieter than usual. Lily noticed the tension in his posture, the furrow in his brow. "Ryan, is something bothering you?" she asked, setting down her fork. He hesitated, looking at her with a mixture of frustration and concern. "It's just everything," he said, his voice low. "The business, the family, and now you and me. There's so much to balance, and I feel like I'm always walking on a tightrope." Lily's heart ached for him. She knew how hard he had worked to get to where he was, and how deeply he cared about making everything work. But she also knew that he had been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders for far too long. "You don't have to do it all by yourself, Ryan," she said gently. "You don't have to carry the world on your shoulders, not anymore. You have me now. We're in this together." His eyes softened as he looked at her, and for a moment, she saw the man who was struggling to let go of control, to trust someone else to share the burden. "I know," he said quietly, "but I've always been the one to take care of everything. It's hard to let go." "I understand," she said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "But you don't have to do it alone. I'm here, and no matter what happens, I'm not going anywhere." Ryan exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly as he squeezed her hand. "I don't know what I would do without you, Lily," he said. his voice filled with a sincerity that made her heart swell. That night, after dinner, they sat together on the couch, talking about everything and nothing. As the evening wore on, Lily realized that their connection had reached a new level. There was no longer any doubt in her mind. She was no longer just the maid, the fake girlfriend who had come into his life on a whim. She was a partner, someone who had become indispensable to him. The following week, Ryan invited Lily to accompany him to a family event, one that was important enough for him to bring her as his partner, not just as a temporary companion. It was a bold move, and Lily felt the weight of the decision. She had always kept her distance from Ryan's family, unsure of her place in their world. But this time, something was different. She wasn't just the hired help anymore. She was a woman who was being seen for who she truly was, and she was ready to face whatever came next. The event was formal, filled with people who had spent years in Ryan's circle. As they entered the venue together, she could feel the eyes of the guests on them, the whispers that followed their every step. But Ryan's hand in hers was steady and sure, a silent promise that they were in this together. As the evening went on, Ryan's mother approached them. Lily could feel the weight of her gaze, the scrutiny in every word she spoke. "Ryan," his mother said, her tone clipped, "I didn't realize you were bringing Lily tonight." Ryan didn't flinch. He didn't hesitate. "Mom, Lily is with me, and that's all that matters," he said, his voice firm but calm. Lily held her breath, but when she looked at Ryan, she saw the determination in his eyes. For the first time, she saw him stand his ground, not as the CEO, but as a man who was fighting for what he wanted. As the evening continued, Ryan's mother softened just a little. She still wasn't fully convinced, but there was no mistaking the respect she had begun to show Lily. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. That night, after the event, Ryan walked Lily back to the car, his hand still firmly entwined with hers. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice gentle. "I think I'm finally starting to feel like I belong," Lily said with a smile. Her heart light for the first time in a long while. Ryan smiled back, pulling her closer. "You do belong, Lily. With me, with my world. You've always belonged here, even when I couldn't see it." The warmth in his voice melted away the last of her doubts, and as they drove home together, Lily knew that they had reached a new chapter in their journey. They weren't just pretending anymore. They weren't just playing roles. They were real, and together, they would face whatever challenges came their way. With Ryan by her side, Lily knew that the future was full of possibilities, and that they would take them on, together. As the weeks went by, Ryan and Lily's relationship continued to deepen in ways neither of them could have predicted. They had started as two people playing roles in each other's lives, but now, they were more than that. They were partners, not just in the eyes of the world, but in their own hearts as well. Ryan's commitment to her was unwavering, and for the first time, Lily truly felt that she belonged, not just to him, but to the life they were building together. But just as things were starting to settle into a new normal, a challenge arose. Ryan's company was facing a major financial hurdle. A competitor had launched a new product, one that threatened to outshine their own. Ryan was under immense pressure to turn things around, and it was taking its toll on him. Lily could see the change in him. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with a quiet intensity. He worked late into the night, spending hours reviewing reports and strategizing with his team. The man who had once made her feel like she was his priority now seemed distant, consumed by the demands of his business. One evening, as Ryan returned home later than usual, Lily found him in the study, hunched over a pile of paperwork, his eyes bloodshot and tired. The moment she entered the room, he looked up at her, his face lined with exhaustion. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up, Lily," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "The company is on the verge of a collapse, and I can't afford to let it happen. I've spent my whole life building this, and now it feels like it's slipping away." Lily walked over to him, gently placing her hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone, Ryan," she said softly. "I'm here. You've already built so much. You're not defined by just one company or one failure. I believe in you, and I know you can get through this." Ryan looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and doubt. "I don't know, Lily," he said, shaking his head. "I've never been in a position like this before. I don't know what to do." Lily crouched down in front of him, lifting his chin so that their eyes met. "Then let me help you," she said, her voice steady. Not as a partner in business, but as your partner in life. We'll figure this out together, just like we always have. Ryan exhaled slowly, a weight lifting from his chest as he looked at her. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he could breathe. You're right, he said softly. I've been so focused on everything that I forgot what really matters. I've been pushing you away, when all I needed was to let you in. Lily smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair away from his forehead. You don't have to carry this burden alone, Ryan. You have me, and I'm not going anywhere. From that moment on, things began to change. Ryan slowly began to open up to her more, letting her in on the details of his work, sharing his fears and doubts, instead of keeping them bottled up. Lily, in turn, supported him not only emotionally but also practically. She helped him come up with new ideas, worked alongside him on brainstorming sessions, and even sat in on meetings where she could offer her perspective. Together, they began to make progress, slowly but surely. It wasn't easy, and there were days when they both felt overwhelmed, but they had each other. And that was enough to keep them moving forward. The real breakthrough came when Ryan decided to take a bold step. He called a meeting with the company's board and proposed a new direction, one that would focus on innovation and customer experience rather than just trying to outdo the competition. It was a risky move, but it was a move that felt right. The board was skeptical, but they agreed to give it a try. Over the next few months, Ryan's company began to turn things around. Their new approach gained traction, and the results were slowly starting to show. Ryan was no longer carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had learned to share the load, to trust in Lily and in the team they had built together. As they celebrated the company's success at another gala, this one a far more relaxed affair than the first, Ryan stood beside Lily, his arm around her waist, a proud smile on his face. We did it, he said softly. Lily looked up at him, her heart swelling with pride. No, Ryan, she said, you did it. We did it together. Ryan smiled and kissed her on the forehead, the noise of the crowd around them fading as he held her close. It had been a long road, filled with challenges and doubts, but now, standing here with Lily, he knew that everything they had gone through had been worth it. They were no longer just pretending, they were living their truth. Together, they had found a way to build not only a successful company, but a life they could both be proud of. And as the night wore on, with music playing in the background and laughter filling the air, Ryan realized that the greatest success of all was the one he had found in Lily. The woman who had taught him that love, not business, was the real key to happiness. As the months passed, Ryan and Lily's relationship continued to thrive, growing stronger with each day that went by. The challenges they faced, from family pressures to the uncertainty of the business, had only served to deepen their connection. Together, they had overcome every obstacle that life had thrown their way, and now, more than ever, they were certain that they were meant to be together. The success of Ryan's company, once in jeopardy, had become a symbol of not just his leadership, but their shared strength and vision. The new direction they had taken was paying off, and the company was flourishing once again. But for Ryan, the real success was the life they had built outside of work, the one where he didn't have to hide behind his title or wealth, where he could simply be himself with Lily. One afternoon, after a long week of meetings and business calls, Ryan decided to take a break from the chaos. He invited Lily to join him on a weekend getaway, a chance for them to reconnect and relax away from the pressures of everyday life. They drove to a cozy cabin nestled in the mountains, far from the city's hustle and bustle. It was the perfect escape, quiet, serene, and peaceful. As they settled in, Ryan couldn't help but smile at how much he had come to rely on Lily. She had become his anchor, the one person who truly understood him, not as the CEO, but as Ryan, the man who had found love and happiness in the most unexpected place. That evening, they sat by the fire, the crackling warmth of the flames illuminating their faces as they enjoyed a simple dinner. The night was calm, and for the first time in a long while, Ryan felt completely at peace. He looked over at Lily, his heart swelling with gratitude. I never thought I would find this, he said quietly, his voice filled with emotion. I never thought I would find someone who could make me feel like this. Whole, grounded, truly happy. Lily smiled, her eyes soft and understanding. I feel the same way, she replied. I've spent so much of my life thinking I didn't deserve this kind of happiness, but with you, I finally feel like I do. Ryan reached over and took her hand in his, his fingers gently caressing her skin. "You deserve everything, Lily," he said, his voice unwavering. "You've shown me what real love is, and I'm never going to take that for granted." As the fire burned low and the night grew darker, they sat in silence, just enjoying the quiet company of each other. It was moments like this, away from the world's expectations, that made them both realize how far they had come. They weren't just a CEO and his maid anymore. They were partners, equals, and more importantly, they were in love. The next morning, after a peaceful night's sleep, Ryan woke up early to prepare breakfast. As he worked in the kitchen, Lily came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You know," she said softly, "I've been thinking." Ryan turned to look at her, a curious smile on his face. "What about?" "About the future," she said, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. "About us. I know we've been through a lot, but I can't help but wonder where we go from here." Ryan took her hand, leading her to the small dining table by the window. He sat down beside her, his eyes never leaving hers. "Wherever we go, we'll go together," he said firmly. "You're not just a part of my life, Lily. You are my life. And as long as we're together, I know we can face anything." Lily's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and for a moment, she couldn't find the words to express how she felt. But as she looked at Ryan, she knew that this was the life she had always wanted. A life filled with love, trust, and the promise of a future built together. "I love you," she said softly, her voice full of sincerity. "I love you too," Ryan whispered, leaning in to kiss her gently. It was a kiss that sealed the promises they had made to each other, the promise to always fight for their love, to always put each other first, no matter what life threw their way. As the days passed, Ryan and Lily continued to build their future together. They worked side by side, not just in business, but in life. Their connection was unbreakable, and nothing, not even the pressures of the world, could tear them apart. Ryan no longer saw Lily as just the maid or the fake girlfriend. She was his partner, the love of his life, and together, they had found something far more valuable than any business deal or family approval: true happiness. And as they walked through life hand in hand, ready for whatever challenges or joys the future would bring, they knew one thing for sure: they had already found their greatest success in each other.